Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. This is Jeff Acaba from Upcaso, and welcome to our webinar today to introduce to you the additional data collection tool as part of your ongoing community engagement assessment tool exercise. This is the orientation for the mapping tool. And as you know, and as Upcaso and also through Act Africa, most of the countries have already started, or at least initiating the community engagement assessment tool exercise. This particular tool, which we will introduce through this webinar, would support the development of a directory of civil society organizations and community-led partners who are currently working or possibly working on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, or PPPR. And we will put this information in our planned community of practice so that current and future stakeholders and partners who will be engaged in the pandemic governance would be able to access this directory and also the partners directly. This will also provide clients and the populations that we serve to have access to the different services that that the partners who will be identified to this mapping tool will provide. Before we officially, and before I hand this over to Titus, who will provide us with the orientation on the tool, may I ask everybody to introduce themselves through the chat box by mentioning your name, your organization, and also your particular role in the community engagement and leadership on pandemic governance or CELG project. So please feel free to introduce yourselves. Also, mention which country are you calling from. All right. I see Olive just arrived, and as well as Rachel, coordinator from Act Africa. Maybe may I call on Olive very quickly if you'd like to say something before we officially start our orientation. Olive?
Thank you so much, Jeff. Of course, I wasn't expecting to talk. I was expecting more of to be listening, but thanks for providing us with this opportunity to just say congratulations for reaching this far. I know it's been a big task, uplift, getting to where we are right now. So on our side, from the Global Fund, on behalf of the CRG department, would like to congratulate you all. And especially now as we're going through the mapping tool, which aims to ensure that we have and we know who we have, who are the KVP networks and how can we better engage and support them to participate in processes at national level. So I don't really have a lot, but just to say thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'll be listening. I'll only be available for the first 30 minutes. Thank you so much, Jeff. Over to you.
Thank you, Olive. Rachel, as the coordinator for the African region, I wonder if you'd like to say something. No pressure, by the way.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm finally glad the mapping tool is about to roll out. I mean, the whole project is to be done ASAP. So I'm finally glad we're having this orientation to add the mapping tool to the assessment to enable our abled country partners to complete their task. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. All right, without further ado, let me hand this over to Titus James, who's our ongoing consultant. He was one who developed our community engagement assessment tool, and he actually also developed the mapping tool. So handing this call now to Titus to introduce to us the mapping tool.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear me? Please confirm.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here again, to meet you again, and share what we have been working on for a couple of days together with Jeff. Jeff, I would like to request you to please display the presentation. On my laptop, it doesn't seem to show, since you have it kindly to. Yes, thank you. So the community engagement assessment mapping tool orientation meeting for the key stakeholders. Okay, thank you. Jeff, next. So members, I would like to quickly take us through this outline. We'll do a quick background introduction to the mapping tool, and then we'll do the aim and objectives of this exercise. I'll quickly go through the guidance that we have in the structure of the tool, the targeted populations, and how to include the populations that we are targeting, the process of data collection, and those who will be collecting the data and how we'll analyze this data. And then we'll go in greater detail through the mapping tool itself. And then that's where I would like to really request your keen attention and contribution to the process. Next.
Sorry, Titus. As I move to the next slide,
Jeff.
there's a
Can you hear
request.
me?
Yeah, there's a request if you can increase your volume a bit. And if
Okay,
you can
thank
move
you.
closer to the mic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So let's go next, Jeff. Okay, so just as an introduction, this activity is really being led by ACT Asia Pacific and in partnership with the ACT Africa Global Fund and Stop TB Partnership. I'm confident most of us are a bit familiar with this process, but it's really a process of developing and piloting the scalable community engagement strategies, approaches, and the model that will enable especially key and vulnerable populations to influence COVID-19 and pandemic preparedness and response decisions at the country level. And the list here is maybe not very exhaustive, but the list of some of the TB key population categories that we have. And then at the bottom, we have the 8 pilot countries that will be working in: Cambodia, Cameroon, Kenya, Indonesia, Mozambique, Nigeria, Philippines, and Sierra Leone. Next. Next. So in terms of the aim of this process is really to map the existing organizations working on specific TB KVPs at the country level in order to be able to identify the various services and other means of supporting TB KVPs, including engaging in the PPR governance processes. So in terms of this particular mapping activity, we'd like to identify the existing organizations and the groups that work with or cater for the specific TB KVPs as predetermined within each country. Then we will list the various services of commodities and other means of support that these organizations are providing to the TB KVPs. And then we will geographically locate these organizations and determine their geographic scope of work. So these are kind of objectives that we want to achieve through this process. So next, Jeff. Next, please. Okay, so in terms of how we'll go about this process, first of all, I would like to, in advance, share with you the structure, how this mapping tool is structured. We will look at the organization profile, in which we look at things like the nature of the organization, the legal and administrative status of the organization in the country of operation, the capacity and resources that the organization has, and which population does that organization that we want to include in this mapping process is targeting. Then we will also look at the location, the geographical scope, in which we will look at the physical address where the organization is exactly located, the level of operation, at what level is it operating within the country and within the response, and then the geographical coverage in terms of which the reach the organization is extending its services. We will also look at the engagement in the TB COVID-19 PPR activities, including the services and the commodities that we have highlighted above. In terms of the structure, this is how we look at, we go about the mapping process. Next. Yeah, so in terms of the population that we want to include and the criteria of including each organizations to do the mapping, we have adopted an earlier known criteria of categorizing these organizations: civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, the community-based organizations, community-led organizations, and we'll be looking at the details in the tool itself regarding this, and then finally the networks. So these are the categories that we'll include in the mapping process. And then in terms of data collection, we'll be using a snowball.
Sorry, Titus, can you
approach.
increase your volume? Can you increase your volume a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we will, in terms of the data collection process, we'll be using the snowball approach. In other words, reaching one organization or a network, which will then refer us to the next organization that is within the categories we want to reach. So this is how we go about reaching the organizations in terms of our inclusion criteria. And then, of course, we'll have a table that will guide the snowballing process of identifying the organizations shared with the organizations that will have reached in the first instance. So in terms of the data collection, we need to have and oriented so that they have a clear understanding of the tool, and they should have at least some basic experience in using similar tools in mapping process like this one.
Hello, Titus. Are you still there? I think we lost Titus. Let's wait for him to come back. But while waiting for Titus to return, please use the chat box or the raise hand function if you have any questions or clarifications on the tool so far. It seems like Titus is back, but his mic is not connected yet. Hola, ideas. I hope we'll get the recording as joined a bit late. Yes, definitely. Not only the recording, but also the documentation report. It seems like we lost Titus again. Anyway, it's very nice to see that we have around 35 participants for today's webinar. Thank you for your interest. Yeah, I see that, Rachel. And it's good to see that some of the consultants are also here with us. Okay, while waiting for Titus, Does anyone want to share any status updates on their ongoing community engagement assessment tool exercise? I see some of the country partners and consultants from my region. Rachel, do you see some of yours as well?
Yeah, they are all here.
Ah, perfect.
Hello, Jeff.
Yeah.
Extremely sorry. I don't know what happened. I was on
That's okay.
my
Glad you're
Wi-Fi,
back.
and yeah, I'm very sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, so we are on data analysis. I had mentioned earlier on that when we collect the data, we need to do some analysis to look at the organizations that will fit within the criteria that we have defined above. So in terms of the analysis, but it has also some open-ended questions. So some analysis will be done, but in addition, we will have to do some geomapping to identify the actual locations of the organizations that we have mapped out. So that is in terms of the analysis component of the mapping. So next. So Jeff, I would like us to switch to the actual mapping tool. We focused on having a tool which is simplified, where that it's also part of the already ongoing process of the assessment that Rachel mentioned earlier on. So kind of scroll down directly to the table 1, which is the tool itself. Thank you, Jeff. So structure like we have looked at in the beginning, we'll be looking at the profile. And in terms of the profile, we have a number of questions. And we have simplified the filling process in a way that if this tool is either typed and printed out, it can still be used by ticking off the boxes. But also, if it is filled online, these boxes will be you are able to tick the boxes by clicking on the boxes. So if you double click the box, it will give you the option of ticking the boxes. So the questions under the organizational structure include the type of the organization, and we would expect that we'll tick in the boxes in the box that is relevant. And then at the bottom, number 2, we look at the and that's when you type out the real year of the founding of the organization. And then we also would like to know if the organization is registered or if it's not registered. But the respondent has an option of indicating if they don't know whether the organization is registered or not. And if it's registered, then at what level is it registered? So we looked at the national level, at the sub-national level, or at the community level. So we also have a question about the contacts in which we have requested the postal address, the phone, the email, the website, and Facebook and Twitter handles. As Jeff mentioned earlier on, we are also going to be getting out of this a directory. So these contacts are aimed at identifying the organization and also being able to contact the organization. Jeff, do we still have the comments relevant in this? I think this is a kind of an earlier version. So, so in this case, we also would like to know the number of staff of the organization. So the instructions here would be like in each of these categories that we have mentioned. We would also like to know if they are full-time, salaried staff, and then the gender for each of those categories. And then we also have part-time salaried staff by age, part-time or full-time salaried staff by gender, and also by age. Gender categories in the age 18 to 29, 30 to 64, and then 64 and above. But also we have a final category of the volunteers. So in terms of the staff the organization may have, these are the categories we identified: full-time, part-time, by age, and also the volunteers. In question 7, would like also to understand the sources of funding for the organization, so where they obtain their resources. And here we have given categories, options, including the government or donor funding, community contribution, proprietors' savings, those who started up the organization, sometimes they are funding the organization activities, or if the organization some other revenue, or you could also identify or include any other sources of income or resources for the organization. So we would also like to understand in question 8, at least for the year 2022, what was the operating budget for that organization, for that entity we are including. So here I would like to request that it is stated in the USD, in the United States dollars or equivalent, so that it's easy for us to get the standard across the organization and across the countries. In number 9, we would like to have other physical assets that the organization has. It speaks to the capacity of the organization still. And we left this open to respond in 2 ways. One is can you tick the first box on the left side? For example, if the organization owns a building or a home, and you can still indicate the number of those items on the right box, on the box on the right side at the end of the selected text. So for example, the second one is on the vehicles. If vehicles exist, then how many vehicles? If they have motorcycles, how many are they? And computers, and then any other assets that the organization may own. As I said, this is really to assess the capacity of the organization in terms of the assets and its ability to deliver services. Then we have question 10 that looks at the targeted populations. So in terms of the targeted population, we use the list of the known TBKVPs, and that's why I didn't put any open option of inclusion. So in terms of the location and geographical scope, we have requested for information around the actual location, the physical location, the street, the road, the building, and maybe if it's if the location is best described by village, town, township, or district, that is the way we thought the information would be captured. And we will talk about this in, a little bit later. We had a discussion about being able to locate the actual GPS location of the organizations. I think can be determined from the physical locations stated here. So in terms of the other activities that are involved, the organization is involved in, we would like to elicit information on the activities that the organization is engaged in. So here we request information regarding the engagement of the organization in the development or review of the national strategic plan, resource mobilization activities, participation in decision-making, joint community mobilization and advocacy, multi-sector accountability activities, like community-led monitoring and any other activities that might be mentioned. So we also requested the respondent here to tick off the activities and include. In question 15, this is about the services. We are asking the kind of services the organization provides to the TB KVPs. And at least we said, at least mention one of the activities. There is an array of activities that I have picked from a number of documents, and these are like the standard activities for the TB KVP COVID-19 response. So we also request at least one to be ticked if the organization exists as a TB intervention organization, but also it allows for multiple ticking. So the respondent can tick as many activities as the organization is involved in. In question 6, do I need to go through these activities one by one? I think we will go through them in detail. The last part is what commodities does the organization provide to the TB KVPs? And this we particularly identified two. The list identified food, medicines, masks, IEC materials, information, education, and communication materials, funds, like seed funds for income generating activities, and any other activities. We also provided commodities, rather, we also provided for in the event that the organization does not provide, but maybe providing only the services. The last question here, question 17, looks at how the organization accesses the commodities that they provide to their beneficiaries. And in particular, we listed possible sources of such commodities, like from government entities, like the ministries of health or the NTPs within the countries, from donor agencies, from maybe purchased using own funds or any other source through which they get the commodities that they provide. And at the foot of this, scroll a little bit up, Jeff. Yeah, so we provided this to facilitate the snowballing process. So where we would like to request every entity that is identified to identify 10 other civil society, community-led or community-based organizations that they know that are engaging or working with the same targeted population. So we would use this as the tool that would identify other organizations that would be included in the process. I have not specified in terms of the number of the organizations that will reach in the mapping exercise, because the mapping exercise is intended to identify all the organizations that do engage in TB, COVID-19 and PPR processes. So as possible to identify the organizations. So far, this is the tool that we have, and I am glad that the members will be able to make additional input, and we enrich this tool to the point that we'll be able to capture the information that will help us identify, map out all the organizations in the selected countries, pilot countries. I think at this time I would like to pause for any comments, guidance, input.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Thank you so much, Titus. There's a number of questions that have been raised while the presentation's ongoing. But let me ask Stephen first, who raised their hand. So Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, Titus. Good morning, all. First question already is on the chat box is about the nomads population. Where we are, the nomads population is as high, almost as high as the IDPs, and we have been correcting this in the earlier tool that was shared. The nomads should be like mentioned specifically, not to be grouped with the migrant population because of certain reasons. So this is one. Then the second one, it's about some of the options that are in the tool. Like I believe that there's room for multiple choices in the options. For example, even the funding source and also services rendered, etc. These are my comments. Over.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So this is a suggestion to add nomads. Let me just put it here. And speaking of population, there's also a request to add homeless populations and people with mental health conditions. I'm just gonna note this here and share it with you, Titus afterwards. Then the next set of questions is around the budget. This one. So there was a question on whether we need to include to specify the donors. So the purpose of this question is to understand the economic capacity of the organization. But I wonder, Titus, do you have any thoughts in terms of the need to specify the donors here?
Yeah, I know that sometimes such information is kept discreet, especially by most civil society organizations. But we are increasingly going into an era where organizations are okay with sharing the information for the same.
Yeah.
You need to understand where the resources come from for purposes of resource mobilization. I think it would be okay. Maybe you could put the option of leaving this to the discretion of the respondent or the organization if they feel comfortable or not comfortable to share.
Yeah, because that might also affect and to some countries might even incriminate the donors because these forms of information will be available publicly. So it depends on the comfortability, no? There's also another question related to funding. So for this particular budget, will this only pertain to TB or COVID-19 related budget and funding, or will this cover the entirety of the budget of the organization?
What I had in mind is that the organization budget.
Organizational budget. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Another question is from question on question 14. There was a question whether there was an observation that advocacy activities have not been included as a type of activity here.
I didn't get that, Jeff.
So there was an observation from Sylvia. They're asking what about advocacy activities in question 14? Since advocacy is
advocacy activities.
Yes, Sylvia, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking. I knew, okay, since that question number 14 was talking about what advocacy activities does the organization implement. So it was just, I think, a bit of typo, or yeah, because down there, then 15, it came to what services. Then I thought number 14 is a question that was geared towards asking about advocacy. And now that I'm online, I was also wondering, the other question was about the sampling kind that has been selected, like passive. I thought snowballing, I thought that will be easier or will be more applicable in settings where we don't know if there are any organizations and therefore we are depending on the word of mouth to get to the next. And in settings that have like established networks of civil society, maybe it will be easier to get that list from maybe, yeah, those listing will be available. Just wanted to understand a bit why not passive and now snowballing. Thank you.
So if I may, Titus, the idea around the snowballing is because we need to establish the connections of the different partners. So for example, your first respondent would accomplish this form, and then in the end, they will identify, say, 3 organizations that they work directly with. The idea is for the interviewer to identify the next respondent by choosing any of those 3 organizations. So
Yes, can we also maybe understand also from that perspective, we could also say like the first organizations could be selected passively, then subsequent organizations can be identified through the snowballing process.
Yeah.
So I think you are correct on that.
yeah, so because if we broaden it to purposive, that would mean that we may be able to retrieve a directory of 10 organizations, and then we can just choose. But we need to establish that connection from these organizations. That's why we need to do this snowballing. Thanks for that question, Sylvia. There's also another suggestion from Josfat to replace tricycle drivers with boda riders. So just a clarification on the population. So these populations have been pre-identified already based on your meetings with your respective regional coordinators. The selection of the tricycle drivers specific to the Philippines. But if there are countries that would include, motorbike drivers, tricycle drivers, we can include this here. So I think this suggestion to have to perhaps add rather than replace would be okay. I hope this is okay for motorbike, as long as the as long as the population that we're pertaining to is the same. Okay, I see Paul's hand is up. Paul, go ahead.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Titus, and thank you everyone all. So my concern here with regard to this target population, can we add others there so that others will be captured? And also looking at question number 2, which is actually talking about the year of starting. So I don't know if the month and day will be included there. Thank you and over.
Thank you, Paul. Titus, so
yeah, I think the year would suffice. If we only get the year, I think it would suffice, because I think the purpose of the question is really to see how long this organization has been in place. So I think the year would suffice. It wouldn't. Maybe what you think, what others people think about this, but I thought the year would be sufficient.
Yeah, I think having just the year would suffice. Since like what you said, the purpose of the question is to just identify the length and the longevity of the organization. Baila has a question about the GPS question for the geomapping. So we had, so Titus and I have had, and also there were a few comments also when we shared this through Google Docs about the geomapping. So what we thought is, and it's actually relatively easier now. Once you have the actual postal address of the organization, you can easily locate it through Google Maps. You don't need to identify the exact GPS to be able to get where they are located. So having the address alone would help you out identify where the location is of these organizations. Unless there are any other experience wherein it's been difficult to identify. Yes, Baila, go ahead. And then Sylvia after.
So I think that is challenging in Sierra Leone because most of the addresses you cannot find them using Google Map also. So it will be challenging in Sierra Leone, especially those that are located in the provinces.
I see. Okay. So Titus, what do you think of adding the GPS location if the postal address would not suffice?
Yeah, I would think so. I think we had, as you said, we had discussed this earlier on, and in some of the cases where it would be difficult to locate using this physical and postal address, then maybe with the GPS phones and be able to precisely locate. Of course, the other part of the discussion about this was for some of the countries where some organizations may not be comfortable with being identified, the actual location being identified. So we had indicated that this could also be to the discretion of the organizations, and we could give some address, but not necessarily specifically locating the GPS by GPS. So I think this would be handled from country to country.
Taking some notes here, and we can decide later, Titus, on where to put this information. Yeah, but the consent is important. Okay, Sylvia, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think I also support the issue of the GPS location because the addresses we have on the postal is very different sometimes with where the organizations are, and this will be a plus, especially when we want to do like dots on the map of the country to know where each is located. But that was not my contribution. My contribution was on the question of the budget. Rather than, if you could scroll down there, rather than asking about the amount of money that the organization does and trying to understand a bit about its capacity, yeah, that one. Yeah, if you want to know the capacity of the organization better, especially how, yeah, it will be good to know whether they've been a recipient of a major grant or a sub-recipient or a sub-recipient, what role they have played in terms of receiving those prime grants. And then that also is a pointer towards the capacity of the organization. That's one of my contributions. The second will be on the, it came up in the registration level and also in the operational level. We have some organizations registered in the country, but they have mandate to operate in the region. Yeah, so I may be registered at the national level of maybe Kenya, but my mandate is to operate in the region in 8 Eastern Africa countries or 12 Eastern African countries. Therefore, that also needs to come up. It came in the registration, but also in the level of operation that we need to add the regional level. Yeah, and also some are part of the, and also down there in terms of operational level, we need to also factor in the global sort of reach. But yeah, I think it's somewhere there's a question on that. You can just decide on the reach of the what you're able to do as an organization in the country. And then last as I go out is the question number 14, I think was not answered yet. I was asking whether with that question, we wanted to identify the advocacy activities that the organization does, or it's just as it is. Thanks. There, it was just around correcting that question, number 14. So to read like, what advocacy activities does the organization implement? Or yeah, because I thought that was the bearing, but maybe you could clarify. Thank you. I submit.
Thanks, Sylvia. Those are really interesting points. Titus, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for the question 14, the intention was to cover beyond the advocacy activities. And I think in the second last option, we have joint community mobilization and advocacy. Maybe if we really want to emphasize the advocacy activities, we can make it a separate option rather than including it in the community mobilization and have another box for advocacy separately.
Yeah. And then on the scope of operations, I think this is a really good observation. I think we missed this. Perhaps just gonna add this into the question. Yeah, so perhaps adding this and then having the same options, but adding regional. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's relevant. Thank you for that inclusion. Yeah.
While I'm adding this, I see Bailag's mic was on earlier. Baila, go ahead.
No, sorry. So my question is on the chat box. I was asking if the questionnaire is going to be in electronic formats or paper-based formats.
So that will depend on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that's what you were already saying, that that will depend from country to country context. But I think both options would work for this questionnaire. Even if it's printed out, there would be an option the options of ticking out, and if it's shared electronically, then the tick boxes are in Word, and you can double click it, and it will give you the option of check marking the choices that are made.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have the option of developing into, say, a survey CTO.
Yeah,
Jeff, as a country, if we have that option, that flexibility to develop it into a survey CTO for.
You mean an electronic survey?
Yes, electronic survey.
It will really depend on the country. And I think this is where Rachel can also jump in, because I cannot speak on behalf of the region. From our end, we do not intend any form of centralizing the data, because we want the data to be kept by the country themselves. But I wonder if Rachel has any idea or any suggestions on, because we had this discussion as well in the implementation of the CEAT, of the Community Engagement Assessment Tool. So Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'm speaking on behalf of the African region. For African region, we've developed a survey for the assessment tool, but since we are just concluding on the mapping tool, we would work on that as well, and then send it out to our partners for the African region. So for the 5 countries I'm working with, we'll send it out to them. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I see. Oh, Joanne's suggestion on the funds and the sources.
We can give options in the budget.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can have a good criterion for giving the range of budgets. I left it open so that maybe at the analysis level we can be able, for example, to say most of the organizations are of this category had a budget of this range, rather than categorizing the budgets now, unless I'm guided on what we call appropriate ranges. I don't know what others think about this.
Yeah, I think it should be okay to provide the figures rather than provide the range. Because we may be able to identify organizations who have the extreme budgetary capacities, and that might really skew if we analyze the data. So I think having just the actual figures would actually be beneficial for us rather than putting them in the range already. That's my thought. let's see, perhaps in the, what I can suggest, Titus, is in the analysis, maybe we can, in terms of the presentation of the data here, we can put it in range,
Ranges.
no? Yeah, rather than in the collection. Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, suggestion from Jackson to correct the typos. Yeah, definitely we'll have a go through this and finalize before we share it with everyone. And Evelyn, on question number 5 on contact details, I can see there's an ask to ensure that consent is obtained. Yes, I believe consent should be obtained at the beginning before starting the interview. That's correct, Evelyn. But we wanted to make sure that for specific questions that they would have consent as well. Because while they will have consent on the overall interview questions, they may have some reservations on specific details, such as contact details, for instance. We just wanted to make sure that while they're saying okay to the entire interview, they're also okay in sharing. We cannot have a blanket consent, especially with these kinds of information. So I don't know, Titus, what do you think about just putting a blanket consent?
Well, maybe the on this particular question for the contacts, based on our discussion, there could be consent on the general response to the questions. This could have very specific sensitivities or no sensitivities. So I would think that even when we have initial consent for a question like this one, of location based on the context in the countries.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
All right, we still have 9 minutes on.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes, Evelyn, go ahead.
Yeah, again, on that issue of contact details, I believe all these things are public. For example, postal address, phone number of an organization, the email, the website, the Facebook, the Twitter. I doubt why maybe any organization would be hesitant to provide these details when they can be obtained, publicly. Well, I'm just wondering, why does a question look so sensitive that we need to seek extra consent? Just wondering.
That is a good question, Evelyn.
Yes.
So perhaps maybe we can ask our country partners who's present in the room if you think there would be some issues in terms of collecting organizational geographic locations.
Well, Jeff, if I may share, as members share, I was drawing this from a similar exercise I've done before, where some countries where human rights issues are concerned, some of the organizations would not like to share the physical addresses, especially key population organizations. So I think this would really depend on the countries. Yeah, so what we did GPS locations, but in those locations would only be shared on request. So yeah, so that's why I had that emphasis in this. But if it's not where the pilot is going, the mapping is going to be done, then I think we could then omit the consent requirement for this question.
Thanks, Titus. And that's also an interesting point that you shared, that while the data collectors have requested for contact details, the information is upon request. So it's not in the data collection, but it's in the data utilization part. No?
Yes.
I saw Baila's mic turned on. So Baila, from your experience.
Yeah, so for us here in Syria, I'm not sure there's a sensitive information to share because like somebody said, it's available publicly. You can get it as long as maybe they have a website. You can get a postal address or all this address. What I think is for us here is sensitive to share is the funding they are receiving. So that's why I was thinking if there would be an option of say maybe not disclose. And also in terms of the contact details, I think if we can include in the in the general consenting that if you do not feel comfortable answering any question, you can skip. I think even though that's also be problematic, but if it can be in at the start, the consenting at the start, that if you're not comfortable answering a particular question, you can skip it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna note it here, Titus, to say that we will be moving the consent the consent reminder in the beginning as a blank statement, noting by last comment that we can skip questions. All right. Maybe one final question, which is from Michael. Will the tool be piloted to validate and ensure it captures the required response? Given the timing that we have, and also this is also the same experience with the community engagement assessment tool. We didn't have time to pilot the tool, so it's going to be similar to this one as well. I think what we can do, so what's going to happen is we will finalize this mapping tool, and we will share them with you as soon as this is finalized, so that this can dovetail your ongoing community engagement assessment tool exercise. And then maybe at some point before you conduct the validation forum, let's have another meeting like this, just to have a reflection and to assess the data collection aspect of this mapping tool, to be able for us to adjust what other information is needed. So that would mean that we will not be able to adjust while the data collection is ongoing. We will adjust the tool for other future users of the tool. So it's not going to be for us. So technically, if you think about it, this will be the pilot and the implementation at the same time. So this is the pilot implementation phase, really. And then we'll improve it afterwards, after this is done, so that future users can have a better data that will be gathered. That's my thought on it. I don't know, Titus, if you have any other suggestions.
Yeah, that's correct. I just agree with entirely agree with you.
Right. We have 3 minutes on the clock. Any final burning questions or comments? If none, Titus, final feedback from you.
Yeah, thank you very much, members. And again, really apologies that I had to break off a little bit and a few minutes, and I'm glad that we have been able to finish going through, and with a very rich input. I'm hopeful that after addressing this, the tool will be good enough to capture the information, and we have a very good mapping exercise within the time we need it. So I look forward to continued engagement until we have the final product. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Titus. Maybe one final request: if people are comfortable with opening their cameras, can we do quick photo ops? Right, let's wait for the others. So as mentioned again, we will share the revised version so that you can immediately implement it in the coming days. I'll also share the recording and the documentation report afterwards. All right, I'm gonna start taking a photo now. 1, 2. Another 1, 1, 2. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.